and I hear she's fantastic. You can go
I've
see
heard that
some of
she's
my
amazing.
former students in Bright Star at Playmakers. They opened last weekend and run till next Saturday. And RLT is doing two things this week. They opened their student production of Antigone, which is a nice little tale of revolution for our time. And Lamar Jones is directing Dominique Merceau's Blood at the Root, and that is has roles for young black men and women and mid-30s, all ages. The casting breakdown is on RLT's website right now, and she's auditioning it tonight and tomorrow. So that's one to go be a part of. They go up in September, but they're auditioning that right now, and I would hate for anybody to miss that opportunity. So, that's what I'm going to do, because, whatever.
No, I have a question that has nothing to do with you, so we can put it this way. If you were to give a play that person that's sitting there in the D.C. area should go see to hopefully get him in the right direction, what would that play be?
Oh, playing right now?
Either playing right now or that he can go see anywhere that he can pick up a book or a copy of it. Just whatever play you feel that he needs to watch in order to get him in a better direction.
That's a hard thing. So, where to start? There are American masters. There are things that are really easy to get into. I think Fences is one of the most accessible 20th century plays. August Wilson is just brilliant. I don't ever hear anybody read Fences that walks away not feeling like they have an understanding of that experience of being a wife or that experience of being a father or being a son and trying to get out from underneath, or family who's ill. I just think Fences by August Wilson is the most accessible. Now, who I'm reading right now, I have a giant young black women are ripping up the theater world right now. That's who I'm reading voraciously. Kirsten Greenidge and Lydia Diamond and Dominique Merceau. Dominique Merceau's stuff is just lays me on my backside. She's amazing. And I think that Justice Theater Project is putting up her, one of hers. No, Lynn Nottage. Lynn Nottage's Sweat is up next spring. If you're going to see anything, I think, as far as the quality of the script and the potential for that show to just be mesmerizing, Justice Theater Project Sweat next spring. Yep, that's what I would go see. She's our Pulitzer Prize winner. Lynn Nottage is amazing. So
she's definitely amazing.
That. Who are you reading and seeing right now?
I'm interested in seeing quite a bit. We've actually got Speed Done Killed My Cousin, which will be playing at Hayti in the 17th, and I believe the Carpetbagger Theater out of the Northeast is coming down to bring that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and there's a couple of plays that will be going on. I need to look at the list, but every 2 years I go to the National Black Theater Festival down there in Winston-Salem. The legendary Larry Leon Hamlin created that, and I have friends that were involved in the planning of that early initial stages. So that was formed in the late 80s, early 90s, but definitely looking forward to looking at that list and seeing what kind of amazing theaters just coming from around the world, because they've had plays that I've seen there from the Hittite Empire out of California. I've seen playwrights out of and theater productions out of New York, D.C., Atlanta. Even one year there was a company that was out of London. So I definitely have to go on that website because it'll start a week from today. It'll be on the 29th is their grand opening, and then it'll run all the way until that Saturday, which I believe is the 5th. So that's they always have just amazing work.
They run the same time as the Women's Theater. So they run the same time as the Women's Theater Festival. So you can see something in Raleigh at the Women's Theater Festival, and then go to Winston-Salem and see something at the Black Theater Festival, which is kind of exciting that festival is sort of devoted to people who sometimes get shoved to the sidelines in the theater world. We have them both running in August in the state on either side of the state, which is kind of exciting.
Yep. Yeah. So you can see them because the Women's Theater Festival will run at the same date, July 29th through August 5th, or will it be a little bit later?
They run all summer. They're sort of like a film festival. They put up things, and it's getting more and more expansive. It's a second or third year now, and they put up things all the way through July and August. Yeah,
so
pretty
there'll
remarkable.
be some amazing work, and you're right. It is good seeing folks that are doing that positive kind of things and that are oftentimes left out of the conversation by the mainstream and everything of that nature. Because, I'm oftentimes amazed at folks that are wanting to make that automatic leap to New York or L.A. or wherever they consider the industry to be, when I think that we do some amazing work right locally, and that you can make it a whole career of doing it locally. You don't necessarily have to go to L.A. or New York. Nothing wrong with going to L.A. or New York if that's your vision, but I think that you can do a whole life and a whole career just around this area.
I think so too. I think it's a different. I think it's interesting. We were having that conversation at one of my friends' baby showers, one of the theater friends, and so there are lots of makers who had babies, and talking about that sometimes I think that we only consider high art when there's a lot of art that's happening in our homes and in our. I think that one of the most represented and under-respected kind of art is the stuff that's happening in churches. Yep. There's a huge amount of art happening out of our church communities that people don't think of don't give the respect that they should.
Yep. And the other thing that you did, and you alluded to it earlier in the conversation, and I've mentioned, and I'll tie it back around to having a conversation about the owners of COPA, but you mentioned that you had thought about adoption, but you actually wound up having a child later in life. So I'm always glad to see when folks have that wish and are able to have that and that are healthy enough to do that, because I know Elizabeth was concerned about that because she's probably, I want to say Elizabeth might be around her 40s, and she's having her first child with her husband that owns Copa, which is the restaurant in downtown Durham. But, of course, he's had a child.
Well, tell her it was just the most intense yoga class I'd ever had. That's how I described it later. It was like the most intense yoga class I'd ever taken. Yeah. But, that's another place.
Go ahead.
With adoption, that's another place where economics, right, changed the kinds of choices that you did. The reason I decided that adoption wasn't something that we could do is, in doing my research, open adoption is psychologically the best for children. And it's harder on adults, but open adoption, a lot of the research shows that that's the easiest and most healthy way for an adopted child to sort of get a grasp on their identity and sort of avoid all the caveats of when it's a closed adoption and some of the psychological impact that can have. But for open adoption, you need to hire all 3 lawyers. It's unbelievably expensive, and there's absolutely no support for it. No state or federal support for the economic burden that an open adoption is. So it's why we decided not to go that way, is we couldn't afford it. If we'd had to do IVF or we had to do adoption, they were 2 routes that we were not able to afford, even though we were interested in both.
So you're interested in both, but we're only able to do the one route that was available to you and everything. But you're right, the adoption, and I think a lot of times people get caught up in not understanding about adoption or fostering or the different other things. I know before my brother had his 2 kids, he was actually a foster parent to a few kids. And I remember one of the greatest incidents I ever saw with a foster kid, but you'll get a kick out of this being a teacher, was the foster kid came to our household, my mother's household, and basically was trying to act out. Well, actually, she was not acting out. Her boyfriend was acting out, and my mom gave him a look, and basically it was that look that moms give people. And as we jokingly said on the ride back, I believe he was staying in Raleigh at the time, was that was the most quiet we'd ever seen of that kid, because I want to say she may have even said something like, I will take you out of here if you keep acting crazy and everything. But that look and that comment that she made, he was the nicest kid on the drive back, and that might have been almost a hour and a half drive back, or an hour drive back. But he was as quiet. He was quiet as a church mouse.
What I can say about teaching over the years is that that's all children really want, is someone who they know notices them. And it doesn't matter if you notice them. It matters if that they know that you notice them. And I think that extra step, sometimes I think we forget.
Yeah, you're very right about that. I do have to tell you, though, I am afraid of one thing that you mentioned in the show earlier, because, as you know, I'm very much busy in the arts and out in the world and everything. So I would be the kid or the adult that would be worried about a theater production that the lights are up, because if you do a lot in the arts, there are times in your life where the Sandman kind of comes and visits you, even though you want to be engaged in the theater. So I'm afraid that I would be the one that would get busted.
Well, I have fallen asleep at one or two productions myself. I have to tell you, I fell asleep on Broadway to Kill a Mockingbird. I thought that production was horrible. I saw it on Broadway. I was mad. I spent $180 to go see it. I was not impressed. I saw Hadestown in the same visit, and Hadestown was unbelievable. And To Kill a Mockingbird, that adaptation, I couldn't understand a word Jeff Daniels said. I thought it was horrible. So I feel you. And yeah, I was embarrassed that I fell asleep there too. Yeah, I was like, I just fell asleep at a Broadway show. I'm a theater teacher, and so I'm laying it all on the show. That the show is really bad.
The show is really bad. When you go up to New York, and I don't know how you go up to New York, do you get a chance to see the off-Broadway stuff? Because that's where I find a lot of great theater is the stuff that's not even on Broadway, but it's kind of off-Broadway stuff.
I do, and I try. If I can get any tickets to anything at the Public and Circle and the Square are the two that I go to. And see, that's the other thing. And don't get me wrong. Like, I love that musicals get people in to see the theater. They're super accessible. That's fantastic. Go take your 6-year-old to Matilda. But unfortunately, a lot of people think that that's the only kind of theater that exists. Right? There are lots and lots of people who, when they say I don't like theater, mean I don't like musicals. And I don't know if high school theater does as much as they could to dispel that, because you've got that marketing thing that you want to sell tickets and everyone will come to see a musical because they're accessible, but then you get this whole thing of like, so yeah, I think that there are lots of people who don't even know that the Public exists. So Public tickets are like, what, $50, $60? It's way cheaper. Like, if you think theater's too expensive, just go see a play.
Very much. You can go see a great play and everything. I remember, then we got to wrap everything up. My one theater experience that I remember was being in the drama department in high school and playing a family in a sea of cars. I want to say the teacher may have been a Durham teacher. For some reason, Haskell or Haskins is coming to mind. But he had us literally sitting up there, lining up 4 wooden chairs together to be the car, and we had to, like, pretend to open the door and be the passengers and the whole thing. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, this is kind of like a weird concept into getting to the theater, but it definitely showed me that you could create this illusion of being in a car, even though it's 4 wooden, and I'm talking about those old-fashioned wooden chairs lined up like 2 together, 2 in front of each other and 2 in the back.
I'm an empty space kind of girl. I like to have. And maybe it's because I grew up in the Catholic Church, right? Like that so much of the Catholic Church is this thinky, imaginative projection of your spirituality. I like to be in an empty space with a whole bunch of other people and projecting images, making it my own, making it personal. I prefer not having it all spelled out for me.
Well, that's great. And I always great seeing you. I was glad that I saw you when I ran into you, and I've got to see another one of your productions soon. I know that you're friends of many of my friends as well, so I've definitely got to see you in a production very soon whenever you've got one, or see some of your students in a production. So I got to see what East Chapel Hill High is doing. That's the only bad thing about being mass transit is that it's not hard. It's not easy to get to things that are a little bit further out, like East Chapel Hill High.
Well, maybe we have to work on that connection, that Chapel Hill Durham connection.
Definitely have to work on that. That's one of my big gripes. I've lived in Durham, have yet to be to Sackville because it's also in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
I've thoroughly enjoyed having you. Dean, you got any last thoughts before we get out? And then I'll also tell you who we've got on next week.
Well, go ahead and tell us who we got on, and then we're going to rock from there.
That sounds like a plan, because next week we're going to have a woman on. Well,